for anyone that needs the summary for okay, you do the call letters. Where are we at? What's our episode? What's our season? You drop in.
I love that. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's season 8, episode 9, 316. Stone Cold Steve Austin, 316.
Mm.
I thought, why not, right? We've
Is that
basically
a is
just,
that a biblical reference? Is that what
yes,
it
it
is? It?
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
Not offhand, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but Stone Cold Steve Austin. All I need is two drinks where I can smash them together. And
Hmm.
you're familiar with this wrestler a little bit, Stone Cold, or no?
I know of him. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, 316. Here we are. We've just basically spent 55 minutes talking about, I guess, my burnout, for lack of
Hmm.
a better word. You've been
Hmm.
doing a great job
Hmm.
of counseling me on it, and we're done with that. And now we have about 5 minutes of whatever it is you'd like to talk about, Chris.
Yeah, I don't even know. So the stone. Let's just. I just looked up the 316. So it's John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. I don't know what the hell that has to do with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't know enough about his lore as to why he did that, but you're tripping me back to like when I think the WWF was a little bit less complex. I think the franchise that there wasn't all the different franchises. Um, there's nowhere to start with our on ramp and kind of disentangle that conversation. That was an incredible conversation that ranged from me going to see a play last night that I thought was a bang on play. So with Coal Mine Theater, A Case for the Existence of God, fantastic play. I think it closed last night. I think that might have been closing night. But if it's on today and anyone can get to Toronto to see it, it's East Danforth near Woodbine, the theater. Great little space, fantastic. Um, I will say the Firkin that's just across the street from it does a hell of a fish sandwich. It was delicious. And Jacob, our server last night, beautiful human being, just a very nice dude. So if Jacob's working, you're in the town, go get yourself a fish sandwich at the Firkin. Their fried pickles were pretty good too. So started talking about the case for existence of God, which is like it was very much a dad details kind of a play, and then going from there to talking about the challenges of the work week and living for the weekend, and then talking about kind of like the lensing of what actually restores you. What bucket is depleted? Physical, spiritual, intellectual, or psychological? Damn, I had some tears there thinking about the dad details, thinking about your week and your last 3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks of just challenges that you've been working through in life and work. Damn, that was an on ramp. That's the I guess the heart of the pod. It's the heart of our friendship too, but I mean it's the heart of the pod that sometimes we're going to get caught in that conversation, and we're pretty happy to be there. So leading into this, it was like I don't have a lot of time today, so uh, big hard pivot. Here's the thing that I wanted to talk about on the pod, and it's something that I'm kind of thinking about moving forward. Two different things, kind of. It's in the same sort of vein. In past seasons of our podcasts, so season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, sometime around this time, late November, you're talking about the spiritual flavor of the season. And we have not made it to that. But I think I want to just kind of say next week, I want to get to that because I've always enjoyed, I've really, really enjoyed, and I've had, it's a certain restorative kind of like um, flavor to that. My backstory as far as connecting to formalized religion is not, like I don't have a born Catholic, did not sort of pursue it, created questions, didn't get any of those questions answered before I inserted other beliefs. So I have beliefs that are keeping me from actually asking questions that I still that still remain from my time in uh, celebrating my Catholic side, as far as the church, the organization of the church, the way the power is structured in the church, their historical atrocities that they've been involved with, the leadership, there's a lot of different pieces that all of a sudden I became in tune to that justified why Catholicism wasn't. But I haven't gone back to really examine Catholicism because the whole dispelling the whole thing means that I haven't learned possibly some lessons that are still waiting for me there. So um, that being said, that being said, because that's a bigger conversation. And I'm not looking to you to bring me back to the church, but I find like these conversations um, that we have around this time of year cool a little bit of my mindset and help me to sort of understand a little of the the uh, the opportunity, the optimism, the engagement, the bridges, the relationships that I think stem from just being a good human. You can say humanism, but in this particular case, I am fascinated by your relationship with your religion and your religious experience, your catechism, and the way that that kind of works for you in the day. I'm fortunate is that I see both your philosophical side and your catechism working together, which is really cool to see because they're not that different. It's just kind of you get extra tools to be able to work through it. And I'm always up for extra tools. But here's the thing that I've been thinking about a little bit, and I don't know how it got into my head. I'm wondering about um, the synergy between meditation and prayer for you. As in, is it the same? Is it just the same thing, and you sort of choose to sort of call it one thing over another? Is it different because there actually are? You say, I need to pray or I need to meditate. Um, and what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like when you actually do the practice, like your sort of practice of praying or meditation? And are there any spaces where you get to say your thoughts on that out loud? So it's kind of like the metacognitive level of prayer and meditation, where you can kind of put them in the same room, the same conversation, and speak to it. So maybe that final thing is what this pod is, the whole decoded mindset. But it was kind of, I started there. What do those two things really, really look like in real life for you? And then I worked backwards into, you know, my own issues with Catholicism and also noticing that we haven't had that combo yet. We haven't had any of that. Lent, is that what we're in? Is that the Lenten? We're in
Advent.
the Lent
Advent.
Advent? Yeah. So this the Advent season, if you were to go back to any of our seasons, and right around this time of year, there would have been conversations that you would have kind of sparked up about the parallels with Advent and what you're going through and how does it look like in the school. So it's
Man, you
very it's a very short conversation.
when you said that you were going to drop a big one when we went online, you weren't kidding because
Mm-hmm.
this is a big one. And if I could just speak to it just for a little
Yeah.
moment, and then
You
I'm good
go,
to
go, go.
go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so without getting too deep, there have been just a few moments in my life where I've literally stood and put my arms out and just surrendered. And this surrendering is like, it's hard for me because of all my issues growing up. I like to have control because uh, of lack of control growing up. And so this surrendering is like, it's actually the most powerful thing I've ever done is to actually say, I give up. I give up. So whatever is now going to come at me because I'm letting go of everything, then just come at me. And we'll see what happens when it washes through. And one of the times that I've done that is in the last spring when I was having difficulty with work and it was really messing with who I am. I literally put my arms out and I said, I give up. Not mostly I more of I give up in that I let go of control. I'm surrendering. I surrender. So what are you going to bring to me? What's going to come at me? And it was done in a spiritual way. And what I decided to do when I surrendered was that I entered into I mixed my meditation with my faith. So I used the rosary to help guide my meditation because I knew I needed time to just sit and to reflect and to kind of let go of things, but I wanted to incorporate my faith. So I surrendered and uh, I used the prayer of the rosary in a guided way to help me with my meditation. I mixed the two, and I've been doing it almost every single day since I started. I've missed a couple of days here and there because of weird things like being at a hockey tournament with Will and then just having to wake up really early and take care of him and make sure he was where he was supposed to be. I lost myself. And then when I realized, oh my God, I didn't do my meditation this morning, then I would step away from the world. And again, I would just surrender and I would enter into it. And I got to tell you, it's been it's been a great reminder that when it hits the fan at work or this week, which started with a bang, literally, and just didn't want to relent. The whole week, literally, I would find myself standing somewhere and just putting my arms out and just being like, what are you going to bring now? What's next? So it's funny that you should mention that, and I can't wait to talk about that more next week. But yeah, I remember where I was in my house when I literally just put my arms out and I'm like, I got nothing left.
Yeah, it's a bigger combo, but I think it's not but, and it's a this idea of surrender, this idea of sort of giving up or giving in, which can be two different kind of flavors of self-regulation. Um, I think um, I feel like a little bit of an exploration for that. Maybe next week we can kind of play with. I think it's because I think that if we go back to being ensnared, and that whether it's an idea, a moment, maybe an entanglement, a person, and that struggle at that, it actually, noticing the difference between struggle that's loosening and freeing and the struggle that's just making the snare tighter, that entanglement making it tighter. Sometimes that's the actual, if we call it a trap, or the idea that it's designed that way. It's designed that with, you know, just a certain flavor of struggle, it makes it tight, and a slightly different flavor. Sometimes it's the context within which that it is, that these ideas or entanglements at work don't work as well as when you're at home or when you're in the car. The discernment, I guess, and the ability to discern and say, I can deal with this now versus I can't deal with this now, or the I could deal with it right now if, all these little different ways to kind of flip that Rubik's cube of an issue over and over and over and over just to find a side to start working the algorithm. Um, I think where I landed is in what I perceive to be a restorative tool, which is prayer and meditation, because it feels like regardless of which one it is, it feels like a very and portable, fundamental, and actually quite simple tool to use as a disruptor to whatever trap you're in. And you and I have, or entanglement, whatever, you and I have, we've done enough now, I think, thinking about and living and actioning Stoic philosophy to have some grounding in its efficacy. And there's a lot there, and there will always be a lot there. But that is a practicum for life. one of the toolkits is the meditation and prayer, which I'll still keep in the same left and right hand, however you want to hold those two things together. Um, and I also do believe that those tools aren't, for me, they're not meant to be used when I'm cool and calm. They're meant to be used when I am entangled. So if we talk about this idea of this is what we train for, in the middle of the entanglement, the goal is not to put those two hands together and just start praying in the middle of the mayhem. It's it's to have access to the understanding that you can discern and you can have a clear, calm head and you can kind of like turn inward and say, I don't have to keep reacting this way. I don't have to keep feeling this deep emotion. I don't have to keep pushing into this person in front of me. I can actually just kind of like make it kind of like for a second and be clear for a moment. Um, my students right now, we just came out of a peace week, which I'll talk about next week too. But peace week was a week long exercise in quiet learning. And we were talking about yesterday what we want to keep and what we don't want to keep, just moving forward with our classroom, our community, our family there. And I had meant we were started talking about meditation, and they talk about how boring it is. I'm like, well, have you ever tried to do it in the middle of a fire drill? And they're like, what? I said, oh, I said, or have you ever tried to do it when one of your parents are screaming at you? I'm like, what? I said, or have you ever tried to do it when you're right in the middle? You're so angry, you're so sad, so crying, your snot's coming out of your nose, you're like foaming at the mouth, you can feel your jaw tightening up. Have you ever tried to use it then? They're like, why would I ever do it then? I said, that's a great question for us to talk about next week, because that's exactly the mayhem that you would be using meditation in. Like that's the Advil, that's the ibuprofen, right? Like that's the thing that you do. That's the thing instead of alcohol. That's the thing instead of grabbing weed. It's in that space of a really good disruptor. So some of your stuff that you shared with this week, my peace week, I think the season, damn it, even this play that I saw makes me think about that power of prayer and meditation as a necessary tool to just kind of like disrupt the things that are not good for you in that moment, and giving you some space to kind of like to say, okay, I don't know if I can handle this, but the first step is giving in, giving up, just giving over to this thinking that in order for me to even kind of parse that out, I have to disrupt this moment in some way. I have to. And here's a tool that I can do it. But I do want to learn more. I'm going to do some research between now and next week, because I think I need to just have a little clearer understanding of Advent in that season again, because I haven't done the work on my end to sort of prime myself for it, and I'd be priming it so that I can have a secular perspective, as you can sort of provide some of the Catholic perspective. I think that's always a good meeting space. So I'll do diligence. I'll make sure I come in informed. The fact that I called it Lent basically means I need to do a little bit of more research, right?
It's understandable. There is connection because anyway, there is a connection, but
Mm,
we're preparing for something positive in Advent, whereas in Lent we're preparing for something. Well, you can argue for something negative but positive as well, because Jesus
mm,
rises. But anyway, I'm not going to get too deep in that because Gary's here. Good morning, Gary. And Rochelle's here, and Rochelle could school both of us, I would say, on
mhm,
Advent and Lent. um, but anyway, I'm looking forward to next week's conversation because
mhm,
I I'd like to go deeper there.
mhm.
I'd like to go deeper there.
And
It sounds
Gary
like you're open
Rochelle.
to it.
Oh yeah, and Gary Rochelle, as always, Gary and Rochelle. So you're coming in on a 20-25 minute podcast this morning, after almost a 45-50 minute on ramp of us talking about stuff. So we were hanging in the green room just chatting before we actually hit the stage. But next week, come on back and join in on this conversation. I think I think there's one of the things you said in the beginning was kind of talking about looking towards the weekend, looking towards the Friday, living for that. And I do know that many people right now in the cycle of the year, this is the month that many people would call. You could call December the weekend of the chronological year. There's many celebrations, many celebrations that occur, renewal celebrations that happen around this winter season in different philosophies and religions and cultures. If I take it back to what's so critical for me is making sure that this idea of renewal is not anchored to a singular point in time, that you have actually access to these things on a continual basis, because life doesn't say we're only going to make you happy on the weekend. We're only going to make you sad on a Tuesday. We're only going to make your job difficult on a Wednesday. Or you can only party in December. That's not really how life works. But us as humans, we've put these things in the space. And for me, it sort of it creates blockages for me in some ways, because it's difficult to talk about the flow of protecting the weekend. Gary Rochelle, I've mentioned that a few times, but just basically this idea that do the work when you can with the resources you got and the people around you and the time that's allotted to it. Have some fun along the way and kind of just make sure that you're always kind of flipping back and forth between the two. If you find yourself living for the Friday because you know that there's an absence of work, stress, whatever, then it's worthwhile examining, because if we do the true mathematics on this, if you only have 2 days of relief out of 7, you can do a pretty quick calculation about how sad your life might be. You could do them out. That's an easy multiplication. So trying to get little bits along the way. So if we blow that right up and saying, December's a month that we live for, and many people do, between the shopping and the joy and the family and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, that's 1/12. Measure that out on a year, or measure that out on a lifespan, right? You decide to live 80 years, so you're going to have only 80 months of joy. So yeah.
Okay. So next week, I'd love to talk about Advent.
Mhm.
I'd love to talk about the Christmas potluck that my staff is doing.
My staff wants to have one too.
Okay. And my escape plan. Hilarious. But anyway, yeah, hopefully we can remember to talk about these things next week.
Oh, of course, it'll pop back up. Plus, whatever Gary and Rochelle bring to our potluck. What are they going to bring to our potluck podcast? Hey, there we go. Potluck podcast next Saturday.
Decoded style, yeah.
Yeah, bring your hot topic. Bring your hot topic. Make sure it stays plugged in and warm. Make sure you follow all proper sanitary measures. Podcast potluck. Brought to you by Decoded Catering Service. There we go. We haven't branded another arm of our institution yet. That actually could be a thing, couldn't it? You could call it that. Potluck, podcast potluck. That feels like an On Ed Mentors podcast. Oh, there's a blast from the past. I know. I saw that. What that did to your face. I saw that. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. Let's be honest. I'm Frank. Let's be honest. Okay. We're over the time that I promised you we'd be done. Okay. Thanks for joining us, Rochelle and Gary and whoever else checked us out. And Chris, thanks for your time this morning.
You're welcome.
This was season 8, episode 9. Stone Cold Steve Austin's 316 episode.
Nice.
Peace.
Peace, man.